So last time we were talking about monogamy and the various ways in which monogamy comes about, both from an ecological perspective. So what do animals, what kind of environment do they live in that causes them to evolve monogamy? And also what are the neurobiological mechanisms that seems to relate to monogamy? We talked about prolactin and oxytocin and vasopressin and a few rodent and primate species. Today we're going to talk about polygamy and promiscuity. We'll start by talking about polygamy. As I briefly talked about last time, there are two different kinds of polygamy. There's polygyny and polyandry. So poly just means many, and gyne is female, and polyandry is many males. Right? So in polygyny, you have a single male who can mate with multiple females. As with any kind of polygamy, polygyny causes a vast increase in the variability of reproductive success. Okay, so that means some males produce lots of offspring and other males produce very few or no offspring. A great example of this is male elephant seals, as we've talked about, because male elephant seals can guard a beach with most of the females there. That single male gets most of the matings, almost 90% of them, whereas the other males get very few, if any, at all. So in polygyny, you get a high variability in the reproductive success of the number of offspring attributable to specific males. The same sort of thing happens in polyandry, but in this case, because females mate with multiple males, you get a lot of variability in the reproductive success of females. Okay, so some females who can guard high quality territories in males get all the matings, and other females get very few, if any. Now, the variability in reproductive success, or the number of offspring, is not as large because females really limit the number of eggs that can be produced. Okay. A good example of this is the wattled jacana, which is shown here from Panama. In the wattled jacana, they show sequential polyandry. So females, because it takes a certain amount of time to create new eggs, they will guard a large territory which overlaps with multiple males' territories. And as she produces eggs, she will mate with a single male, lay those eggs in his territory, and then she will move on to the next male in her territory, lay eggs, mate with him, lay eggs. And so that female gets a high reproductive success. Other females who don't have high quality territories may get very few. Right? They may have a few eggs with maybe one male on their territory, but it's not as many. This is actually a picture of a female wattled jacana. You can see on the wingtips, they've got a bony spur that sticks out. Females use that both to fight with one another for access to males and to protect territories, and they also use those to destroy the eggs or the chicks of males who are on their territory. So they will get rid of chicks or eggs that are not their own in order to bring males into breeding readiness. Okay, so that's two examples of polygamy. Now, there are two different kinds of polygyny that exist. There's more than that, but there's two we're going to talk about. There's female defense polygyny, where males defend females against mating with other males. So males usually can protect females and they sit near them. When this happens, and it's most common in social insects, it happens when females have a short life, so they don't live that long. They have a relatively low reproductive rate, so in many species, females may hatch from a pupa and they may mate once, they lay eggs and they die. Okay, so they may have a limited ability to produce eggs, such as once, and the females are grouped close together. So maybe they live in small ponds or they live in nests that all hatch around the same time. Males can sit and guard those nests or pools, and that way they can get most of the matings. Okay, so that's female defense polygyny. Then there's sort of a classic example of polygyny that we've known about for a long time, and there are many, many examples of this, is lek mating or arena mating, where males set up temporary territories that are just really for mating. So in this case, females, some examples of this include things like peacocks, where males set up these temporary territories trying to attract females to them, and then they mate with them. And really, these arenas don't have any resources on them. They're not high quality territories. It's really just because there's some males there. Females are really looking for male quality, in this case, as we've talked about. And why might females do this? And really the idea is that females actually may benefit because it puts all the males in one place, so they can sort of look over what's available and pick the ones that are most likely to give them good genes, for example, which is one suggestion for why this happens. So basically, when all the males are gathered together, females may be able to choose the males that have the biggest tail feathers, and then therefore have the best genes that get passed on to the next generation. And we talked about in peacocks, where males with larger tail feathers actually produce offspring that are more likely to survive in the next generation. So that's an example of those good genes. There is an alternative explanation, right? Because one of the things we've really struggled with is, well, how do females know if there's good genes, right? How do they pick that out? And in some cases like peacocks, maybe it's about tail feather quality. But the other example is that maybe they're not picking for good genes. They're not picking for higher survival. It's what's known as the sexy son hypothesis, which is females are attracted to certain things about males, and that those males produce more attractive sons that are more likely to get matings in the next generation. So maybe it has nothing to do with survival necessarily, but females are attracted to male peacocks with long tail feathers, and therefore their sons are more likely to have long tail feathers and more likely to get picked off or picked up and mated with in the next generation. Okay, so two possible examples of polygyny that exist that are pretty common and pretty well studied. Now, what about polyandry? So there's not been as much research into polyandry, and I kind of briefly referred to this last time, that we just haven't paid as much attention to it until more recently. It's more common in social insects, so we'll look at some examples in social insects like honeybees. So there are three suggestions for why it might happen. One is that when females mate with multiple males, they can store sperm, and we'll talk about why that is important in just a second. So if they mate with multiple males, they always have sperm present, and that sperm replenishment hypothesis maximizes their reproductive success. They never have to go looking for more males. They don't need to get more sperm to lay more eggs. This would really only be true in species that lay lots and lots of eggs, so they have a really high reproductive rate. Okay, they can mate multiple times in their lifetime, producing multiple eggs with each mating. Okay, so in this way, right, if females don't have to go looking for that single male again, and they have multiple males on their territory or in their nest, they can maximize their reproductive success. The other thing is females may actually gain material benefits. So they may gain nutrients from males if they bring them nuptial gifts, as we talked about earlier in some fly species. They may get protection from other males or from predators because those males are nearby and try to run off any sort of competitors. Lastly, females may gain better sperm quality because they can mate with multiple males. Maybe that genetic variation that those males bring gives them better genes, and maybe those better genes makes them better able to survive. A good example of this is from polyandrous honeybees. So there are species of honeybees that will mate with multiple males and some that will mate with a single male. When females honeybees are mated with multiple males, those honeybees, their offspring are actually less susceptible to disease, whereas the females who mate with only a single male, their offspring are more likely to get disease and die. So there may actually be a long-term benefit in polyandry to help increasing genetic variation, as we talked about with the major histocompatibility complex, and maybe that allows honeybees to be more likely to survive by having better quality sperm that gives them a better immune system. The other thing I said we were going to talk about is promiscuity. And I know it sounds bad, right? It carries all this weight when we talk about promiscuity. But in fact, there are two different kinds of promiscuity. There's sort of the traditional promiscuity where there's no prolonged contact between males and females. So it allows males and females to mate with multiple partners. Many macaque monkeys, rhesus macaques, Barbary macaques show this strategy. When a female comes into estrus, she mates with multiple males that are in her troop, and even males that may be on the outskirts of her troop. And the idea here is that she's increasing genetic variability, she's increasing sperm competition, and so she's getting the best quality sperm for her offspring, which allows them to survive into the next generation. There's also polygynandry. This is where you've got several males and females who form pair bonds with one another. The great example of this are the dunnocks, shown here. So in dunnocks, males and females have overlapping territories, and usually two males and two females will form a pair bond together. So you've got four individuals who all mate with one another, protect territories, get resources, feed offspring. They all essentially help one another out. So they sort of live in this communal environment, helping one another to raise offspring. Now, one of the problems with promiscuity that we haven't really talked about, but that we talk about a lot in humans, is that potentially, if you're really promiscuous as a species, you may be more likely to get disease. Sperm carries the potential risk of a sexually transmitted disease and many kinds of bloodborne pathogens. We know, right, there are lots of examples of that in humans, such as gonorrhea or chlamydia or HIV, but in animals there are similar diseases and many others that we don't even understand yet. So females who are mating with multiple males may be gaining better quality sperm, better genes, increasing sperm competition, but they may also be exposing themselves to risk. So what is the balance in here? One suggestion by Margie Prophet has been that actually females may reduce their risk of disease by using menstruation as a tactic. So menstruation may be a mechanism by which females can rid their uterine canal of any sort of pathogens and protect themselves from disease and reduce the risk of infection. This is really a very controversial theory. There is some qualitative data where you sort of look at which species have longer menstrual cycles or heavier flows and the frequency of promiscuity. When you look at more quantitative data where you actually try to measure the amount of menstruation, the length of menstruation, we don't really see that significant of a correlation between menstruation and promiscuity. So still sort of up in the air, right? But very clearly, if you're a promiscuous species, you are exposing yourself to a greater risk of disease transmission, like with Barbary macaques and similar macaque monkeys. So I've referred to sperm competition a couple of times last time and this time, and I just want to talk a little bit about it. And really, when we talk about sperm competition is direct competition between the sperm of different males once it's been released into the uterine tract, into the reproductive tract of a female. Okay, so sperm competition is the least important in monogamous species, right? Because females are not likely mating with multiple males. And sperm competition is the greatest in promiscuous and some polyandrous species. It has to occur after the mating has occurred, of course, and the female would have to mate with multiple males. We talked about some things that are done to decrease sperm competition by males, such as a sperm plug in macaque monkeys. Females may also have sperm storage sites in the uterus. So in the chicken, there are small canals that help to store sperm inside the uterus. That may increase sperm competition because it can allow sperm to survive for multiple days or even weeks. In some species, even up to months, sperm can survive. And so she can collect high quality sperm and then choose the best quality sperm to fertilize eggs. So what are some of the things that happen with sperm competition? Well, we know that the longer a male gets to copulate, and these are from dung flies, the higher the proportion of eggs he will fertilize, right? So if a male can spend enough time copulating with a female, he decreases the sperm competition from other males, similar to a sperm plug, right? A sperm plug prevents other males from mating or reduces the chance that males may be mating. Sperm may also differ in the swimming speed. So male sea urchins, some produce fast sperm, some produce slow swimming sperm. Fast swimming sperm theoretically can fertilize more eggs than slow swimming sperm. The speed of swimming in male sea urchin sperm is primarily determined by age. So sperm that have been more recently produced can swim longer and faster than sperm that are produced in days or weeks earlier. There is a suggestion, there has been some suggestion that one of the things that males may do if multiple males are mating with a single female, and there's multiple sperm for multiple males inside of a female, that males may evolve a mechanism to destroy other males' sperm, right? It's called the kamikaze sperm hypothesis. The evidence for it isn't really good. I mean, yes, theoretically, there could be a mechanism where males could produce chemicals that could damage other sperm, but they essentially would also be harming their own reproductive success because they would likely harm their own sperm. So there is a theory out there. I haven't seen good data that suggests it's actually happening, but lots of other mechanisms in place to decrease sperm competition, right? So we can see that it's happening.